One of the things we're talking about in this series is how people tend to think less of people younger than them. And all of this starts as kids, okay? My daughter is in the 4th grade, and when her little sister, who's in kindergarten, flips on the TV to watch Nick Jr., it's a household crisis. My oldest daughter's like, no, I don't wanna watch these baby shows. And then the theatrics and dramatics start. You would think we were forcing my 4th grader to have dental surgery or something like that. We're not even forcing her to watch TV. I'm like, just a simple, can we please watch something else, would be just fine. And trust me, look, I've worked with teenagers long enough to know how it works with you too, ladies and gentlemen. I hear the 8th graders talking about the 6th graders. I hear what upperclassmen say about underclassmen. I mean, if you're a freshman, you get what I'm saying immediately. And look, don't worry, okay? All of this happens in adulthood too. My parents are constantly talking about how someone is too young to become CEO of their company, too young to become a head coach, or too young to run for political office. This stuff never stops. Like, it's a real thing that spans through life. For the most part, younger equals underrated. And like we said in part 1 of this series, as teenagers, we often don't like the way adults think about us, look at us, and talk about us. Like whether they consider us like rebellious, selfish, lazy, rude, irresponsible, disrespectful, careless, foolish. This list could go on and on for days. There's like a bunch of adjectives that adults use when talking about the teenage population. And you don't want to hear all that noise, do you? But if you were really honest with yourself, wouldn't you say that some of that criticism is true? I mean, not you, of course. You are as innocent as a little lamb. You're a little angel baby, okay? I'm talking about teenagers in general. Like, don't you know some teenagers that are rebellious? Some that are selfish, some that are lazy, like rude, irresponsible, disrespectful, careless, foolish. I mean, if you have a niece, nephew, or cousin who's 3 years old or younger, how many people at your school would you trust to babysit him or her? You can already think of some people that you're like, not putting them on that list. If the students at your school were placed in charge of changing our country's laws, wouldn't you be a little nervous to hear the final outcome? I mean, it comes on the intercom, you know, like, attention please, Memorial Day has now been changed to National Selfie Day. Look, are teenagers underrated? Yes. Yes, I absolutely think so. On the other hand, can you be scary sometimes when it comes to your decision making? Yup, 100%. So some of the bad reputation that comes with the younger tag, kind of warranted, isn't it? Now, here's another thing that's interesting. If you were honest, wouldn't you admit that it has an impact on you when you see someone younger than you doing something remarkable? Like, just track with me for a second, okay? If you hang out with a middle school student who seems super mature and responsible, it kind of jolts you a little bit, doesn't it? When you see someone younger than you who shows incredible kindness to people, you're like, you know, that's pretty impressive. If you hear someone younger than you talk about how they want to honor God and follow Him, like, that's pretty cool to hear, isn't it? So let me just recap this. When it comes to the bad rep teenagers get, in some ways it's been earned and validated. In some ways it's unfair, and in some ways it isn't. And when it comes to being younger, you have an opportunity, an incredible opportunity to impress people older than you. I mean, they've already set the bar pretty low for you, which means it don't take much. So how do we rise above the low bar and turn the tide of our underrated reputation? Well, let's talk about it. Last week, we started talking about Paul and Timothy. And even though Timothy lived 2,000 years ago, you actually have something in common with him. During the time he spent traveling with Paul, he was a teenager. And when he eventually became a pastor, Paul told him, hey, don't let people look down on you because you're young, which I think is a pretty cool thing to say. But Paul doesn't stop there. He goes on to try to guide Timothy and how he should and shouldn't act. Paul talked about being led by the wrong people, loving materialistic things more than God, being prideful, getting off course. He talked about things like that because Paul wanted to help protect Timothy by warning him about things before he had to go through them himself. He wanted to spare Timothy some pain that can come with learning things the hard way. So Paul writes this to Timothy, Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to your care. Turn away from godless chatter and the opposing ideas of what is falsely called knowledge. So what exactly was Paul saying here? He was reminding Timothy of the big responsibility he had. That's where the word entrusted came from. In other words, Timothy was responsible for the people he was leading. So he had to live in a way that showed that he took it seriously. Why? Because his actions had power. When people saw the way Timothy lived, it would change what they thought about him. But here's what Paul also knew. that there would be distractions in Timothy's life. Like he would feel the temptation to fall into a pattern of living that would enforce all the negative ideas people had about people his age. On the other hand, there was so much potential to live in a way that changed that, to prove an older generation wrong in how they viewed the younger generation. So Paul tells Timothy to turn away from the things that easily draw us in to bad behavior. And those things were the same for Timothy that they are for us today. Paul, he starts by using this word godless chatter, which basically just means talk that is empty and useless, conversations that aren't helpful, that don't build people up. And then the whole idea of opposing ideas that others might consider knowledge. In other words, look, Timothy, don't just follow what people say because they sound smart. If it doesn't seem to match up with what Jesus said, don't do it. Why did Paul say this? Because he was inviting Timothy to live in a way that wasn't simply a reaction to what other people said or thought. He was encouraging him to live a proactive life. It wasn't just Paul's way of saying that what people thought of Timothy could be wrong. It was his way of giving Timothy something positive to aim toward. Timothy was only able to control what he could, his behavior and his actions. To do that, he had to set aside what others thought of him, because it is not our responsibility to own the actions or reactions of others. It is only our responsibility to own our own actions and responses. In other words, listen, only you can own your actions. That's you. That's all of you who are listening. Only you can own your actions. Now, remember what we read last week. Don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. It doesn't matter how young you are or what people think of you because of your age. You just own you, okay? You live in a way that changes people's minds about younger people. But even if they don't budge, you know you did your part. You own you, okay? Because here's what we know. Some people look down on you because you're young. When they see you, they think they know you. But they really only know about people your age. They're gonna think you're rude or immature, impulsive, lazy, whatever. But while you don't have control over what they think, you do have control over your actions. So here's what you can do about it. Choose to be the opposite of what they assume of you. Don't fall into the trap of being young and not being able to practice self-control with what you say or what you do. The truth is, you can control more than you think. So here are a few tips, okay? Number one, think before you speak and act. Most of the time, we react. We don't think about what we're doing. We just do it impulsively. But our first reaction and initial emotion can sometimes be totally misleading. We have to think, we got to process a little bit before we act. The more we can control how we react, the less likely we will to say or do something that we'll regret later. Now, sometimes we react a certain way because of a wrong assumption we made. So before doing or saying anything, being clear about what actually happened and caused us to feel the way we feel is important. And that may mean reading the text, the comment, or the direct message 2 or 3 times before sending it. You may find a word or phrase that didn't communicate what you meant, or you may realize that you shouldn't press send at all. Like, don't risk ruining a friendship or a relationship with someone because you weren't slow enough, you didn't think enough and process enough before you acted. Number 2 is think about your environment and the people around you. Like, this is huge. We are most likely to reflect the people we spend the most time around. You may have even heard the saying, you become who you hang out with. It's totally true. It doesn't matter how smart or talented you are or how much you focus on making good decisions. When you hang around people who don't make the best choices, you're more likely to make bad choices. That's just universally true. So try this exercise for me, okay? Just to get a better feel for who has influence on you and the choices you're making. Ask yourself, who are the 3 to 5 people in your life that you spend the most time with, okay? Maybe exclude your family, or I'm talking friends, I'm talking the peers, classmates. Write those 5 people down on a piece of paper. Now, once you have a list of this 3 to 5 people, ask yourself this: how do they act? How are these 3 to 5 people doing when it comes to owning their faith, their actions, their view of life? Evaluate carefully if those people will really help you to own your faith and get to the next level with your actions and behavior. Do they push you forward when you come to them with your difficult decisions? Do they make you feel bad about making good choices? Is the way they're behaving improving the reputation of people your age or making teenagers look bad? Now, make a choice of who in your list you want to continue to spend time with. Don't be afraid if none or only one or two of your people meet the standard of excellence you set and want for yourself. It can seem like an impossible, invitation to back away from friendships that have been so important to you. But keep in mind your end goal. Who do you want to be? What do you want people to know about you and other people your age? If you're hanging around people that aren't helping you move in that direction, you probably need to reevaluate their role. I know this is a lot to think about, okay? That's all right. This is a way for you to take charge of your life by taking charge of your actions. You don't have to be victim of your generation's reputation or the poor choices of people around you. You get to decide who you want to be and what you want to be known for. Only you, okay? Only you can own your actions. If you don't want to be seen as underrated, then begin making choices that reflect a different kind of behavior. Take control of your actions. Who owns you? You own you. So as we head to small groups this week, we want you to open up about the areas where you need to take control of your actions. Think back to the times where you didn't control your actions and it caused some bad consequences. Think about what you would have changed. Because the truth is, it all comes down to you. Why? We're going to say it one more time. Because only you can own your actions.